The Long Walk is directed by Francis Lawrence and stars Cooper Hoffman, David Johnson, Mark Hamill, and among others. And in this story, it deals with a group of young men who have to walk for miles upon miles and are being watched by the military personnel in this dystopian type of future where essentially it's a contest for them to walk until there's one remains that can earn the cash prize. And it's pretty simple as that, as there's not really much to really go on about other than it gets into some twists and turns over a personal story that happens with the main characters, but I'll leave it there. Now, here's some backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Francis Lawrence, who I actually have enjoyed a lot of his other films that he's done, including the later sequels to The Hunger Games, and he also did direct I Am Legend from years ago. And while I do have some issues with that movie on certain parts, especially with some of the CGI and a lot of things, I really do enjoy I Am Legend. And while I haven't read the book that it was based off of, I still did quite enjoy. I still enjoyed it. I just haven't seen it in a long time. And this movie was based off a Stephen King book called The Long Walk that came out in the 70s, and it was also under the pseudonym under Richard Bachman. But going into the trailers for this, it got me really interested because every now and then when it comes to these type of like simple type of premises where it's having to deal with a person, or it takes it very like in a not really a closed setting or anything, but it's a very straightforward type of, against the odds type of feel, like The Hunger Games, or even some of the other stuff from what I heard, like The Running Man or things like that, where it's like a free-for-all kind of thing, where it's every person for themselves. I do like when we get into these kind of stories, and plus also, just from the trailers alone, it was also interesting to see how far that these guys can go, especially with all the walking they do and everything. Also got this feeling going into the trailers that it was kind of like a cross between something like Stand By Me, or like mixed in with like Hunger Games, and even some other instances of like I don't know, some other like Stephen King type of stories that I've seen in the way that the characters are kind of approaching and everything. So after upon seeing it, I can say that wow, this movie was everything I really wanted to see, and it's certainly like. It was definitely not only giving me anxiety at times, but it was fantastic with a lot of great things. That it's definitely one of the best one of the best Stephen King adaptations I've probably seen. Probably I want to say since Doctor Sleep. It captures everything that I really wanted to see out of this premise alone, but also like as far as performances wise, to get into my pros. Like the performances in this are all outstanding. David Johnson, who was in Alien Romulus last year, he was fantastic. You also got Cooper Hoffman, who I've really come to admire with a lot of his other films that he's done, especially from one of his earlier works that he did with Licorice Pizza, and then from last year when he was in Saturday Night and stuff. And the guy is coming a long way, and it's great to see a lot of the other performances that come into play too, especially the guy Charlie Plummer. Then Mark Hamill really surprised me the most, because like this was something I did not really expect for an actor that playing this type of character, because I'm so used to seeing Mark Hamill either playing in other roles where he's either doing voice acting, or he's playing Luke Skywalker, or in some cases he's playing like I've heard some other roles that he's done too in the past, where there was a stand where he was playing those kind of like B-movie type of films from the 90s and stuff, like the Guyver and things like that. But it's really cool to see him play like something outside of his norm, and him playing as the villain in this I thought was really tremendous. And he was definitely something that was not only he was very menacing, but he also had some funny parts every now and then when he's like kind of telling the boys why they're walking and stuff. But the way he pulled it off with this type of character I thought was really great, and also have a good blend of some dark humor that actually I did find myself laughing at times, and because you really get to see the feel of how these guys are kind of making remarks to each other and things like that. And when it gets to some really like intense shit, like it doesn't hold back. Also, just this movie doesn't hold back with getting very brutal at points, to where essentially, you've seen from the trailers, they pretty much get warnings. After a few warnings, if they end up stopping or anything get left behind, they end up getting shot. And it's pretty much like as the movie goes along, you start to see a lot of the more risks that they're taking, because not only will they have to like stop, or not only they have to keep themselves energized by either drinking, or in some cases like having like eating in rations and stuff. It really shows a lot of the hard work that even myself, who I like to go exercise, but even I couldn't really do something like that. But it really shows that a lot of the hard work, that it gets a lot more tougher, especially when you see like legs breaking, and seeing a lot of the really insane, crazy stuff that they get themselves into with falling behind. And it really gets emotional too, especially when you get to learn more about the characters and what they're doing and their backstories and stuff and why they're in this. Like, I was really like feeling not only anxiety for the most part, but I was also feeling emotional because you really get to see a lot of the friendship that it builds, where your best friend is essentially walking with you, and you're having to take a risk with trying to like get through all this, and you really want these guys to succeed. And just a lot of the things that when you see like brief flashbacks and with one of our characters, it gives you a lot of that emotional depth that I found myself integrated with. And there's more, and also the music was also very haunting too, and it gets into some really like when you get to the journey there, it makes it really seem like you're on there with them, like you're actually there on the actual field, or like on the actual streets walking around. And the cinematography is also really captivating too, especially when you see in the rain, and then you see the farmland where they're walking through, and you don't really get to know a whole lot about the world, so to speak, because it kind of keeps things very more in a more vague type of approach. But just you get to know enough, especially at the beginning when you see like text about it and things like that. It keeps it in a very more subtle way, where it's like, okay, as the movie progresses, when you start to learn more about the plot, it's like, oh, okay, well, you get to see actually a personal thing happening with a certain character. And it also vibes into some other things where when you hear about some other like tragic backstories happening, it all comes into full gear. And I am kind of, and if I have just like any kind of minor little con, it's not really a con, it's just more of a, okay, it's just something I would just have to like really grasp more, is that when it gets to the ending, it's something that I had to really think about, because it just kind of just like, it ends, but it just kind of ends like in like kind of quickly, so to speak. It wraps things up, but at the same time I was kind of myself, okay, I really had to really feel like I really felt very emotional the way it played into, but it was also something that's like, okay, I had to like really think of, it's something I had to like really be thinking about. I'll just leave it there. But overall though, I had such I really love this movie a lot, and I can't give enough of it. And with that, I'm going to give it a phenomenal grade on the Film Freaks meter. So for those of you who have also seen The Long Walk and also read the book that it's based on, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.